Welcome back. East Cooper Medical Center is the ABC News 4 hospital expert. Dr. Tim Osmond is the director of HBO Medicine, and he joins us now to talk about diabetic foot wounds. Welcome, Dr. Osmond.
It's good to be back.
This is a very interesting topic. How do diabetic foot wounds develop?
They typically develop because of the interaction of the foot, typically on the foot, with the earth. It's the part of the body that interacts with the earth most often. As a result, diabetics tend to have friction forces, shear forces, calluses that form. As a result of that, the skin breaks down, and because the patient happens to be a diabetic, they've oftentimes lost the protective sensation. We call it diabetic neuropathy. As a result of that, they may not even be aware that there's an injury or any sort of anything bad going on with their foot.
So there's like a numbness involved?
Absolutely.
Sort of? Okay.
Oftentimes in someone who has had long-standing diabetes or it's been poorly managed, perhaps their blood sugars have been vacillating up and down, but high for a while, they will lose that protective sensation. As a result, they simply are not aware that they have an injury, be it small or large, to their foot. As a result of that, the skin breaks down, it ulcerates, and now you have a portal of entry for the outside world, bacteria and that sort of thing, to infect the wound and then cause a lot of problems. And it's not a trivial problem. The lifetime risk for diabetic foot ulcers in a diabetic patient is about 25%, probably higher here in the Southeast.
And why is that, Southeast?
Well, because of our diet and lifestyle oftentimes. I mean, we're in kind of that hypertensive diabetic stroke belt. South Carolina is certainly in that. And as a result of that, we tend to see more of those than you would see even nationally, but the national numbers are such that 25% of diabetics will develop a foot ulcer in their lifetime. It can be a real problem in terms of furthering infection, bone infection, sometimes sepsis, that sort of thing. But also the 2/3 of all non-traumatic amputations of the feet are due to diabetes in America.
You mentioned the term sepsis, and I just wanted to share a personal story. My grandfather, we believe to have been diabetic, and he injured himself in a bicycling accident, and it was actually in his leg, not in his foot.
Right.
And he had let it go for so long that actually eventually sort of led to his demise with that.
Right.
So it can occur anywhere, but
it can. It's typically on the foot, and a lot of times it's not traumatic, but because there was some trauma involved, as a result of the diabetes, perhaps in conjunction with the fact that you now have a portal of entry for the outside world to come in, you can get infections that can be life-threatening, no doubt about it.
Now, how can diabetic patients avoid these types of wounds or injuries? Because you say because there's that numbness, so to speak, that oftentimes they don't know that they even have anything going on.
One of the key things about management and surveillance on this sort of thing is to know what your feet are like. Oftentimes I encourage our patients to inspect their feet 2 to 3 times a day. If you find yourself at Disney World walking a lot more than you would, obviously you do even more. With elderly patients, I encourage family members or perhaps in assisted living facilities for the nursing staff to constantly surveil their feet and know what they're doing. Even the slightest bit of trauma, a callus, any sort of thing that's abnormal for that foot needs to be assessed immediately by a primary care doctor to start with, and then to address those problems and change the conditions under which that diabetic foot ulcer began to develop.
Now let's talk about some of the treatments that are available for this, because if you catch it early enough, things don't have to be as serious as sepsis.
Absolutely. It's imminently treatable, and that's the good thing. Oftentimes I encourage patients to, if there's anything abnormal or if they think it's abnormal, to immediately contact your primary care doctor and to change those conditions. One of the first things they're going to assess is there infection? If there's infection, then obviously antibiotics are going to be started. One of the key concepts of wound care in diabetics with their feet is to offload that. That means to take those shear and friction forces out of the picture. Then it becomes an issue for us if it's managed well, but despite that it continues to worsen. That's when they get referred to a wound center like ours, where we have really a vast array of options, but we have more time to do it. Oftentimes our primary care colleagues don't have that time to do the intensive hands-on wound care, to add things like the proper offloading, skin substitute, skin grafting, and then hyperbaric oxygen, where we actually kind of override one of the problems with diabetic foot ulcers.
And those are some of the treatments.
That is. And there's a lot of things that we can do. The key thing is the time that we can spend with a patient, whereas our primary care colleagues just don't have that kind of time because of the crush of patients that need to be seen for other things.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. You see the information on the screen right there where you can, if you are diabetic and you do have concerns about that, you can check out the East Cooper Medical Center Comprehensive Wound Center. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great information. Now let's toss it over to John, who's having some fun.
I am.